Life after Sarah was just a long, drawn-out silence. Our house, once full of laughter and her specific kind of humming, now felt like a tomb. Every room echoed with what wasn't there. Her scent lingered faintly in her closet, a cruel reminder of the void she'd left. My days blurred into a routine, a cycle of waking, existing, and waiting for sleep to bring a temporary escape. There was no joy, just a dull ache that seemed to sit permanently behind my ribs. I'd lost my anchor, my other half, and the world just kept spinning, oblivious. Then, things started getting weird. It began subtly, almost easy to dismiss. Sarah loved this one little brown bird, a sparrow, that used to perch on the sill of her favorite window in the kitchen. She'd talk to it, like it understood her. After she passed, I'd sit in the living room, staring out, and there it would be, every single morning, on my windowsill. Not the kitchen, but my window. It would just sit there, sometimes for minutes, tilting its head, looking in. It felt less like a bird, and more like a little sentinel. Then there were the objects. Nothing dramatic, just small things. A book on my nightstand would be open to a random page when I was sure I'd closed it. A set of keys I'd left on the counter would be on the floor, arranged in a strange, almost geometric pattern. One time, I found a single, perfect white feather on my pillow, even though our windows were always closed. It was unsettling, but I told myself it was just grief playing tricks, my mind looking for meaning where there was none. The dreams started soon after. At first they were just memories, replaying moments with Sarah. But then they changed. She'd appear, so real I could almost touch her. Not talking, never speaking a word, but her eyes held this intense look. It wasn't sadness or sorrow, but something else. An urgency, like she was trying to tell me something important, trying to say, pay attention. I'd wake up from these dreams with the lingering scent of her perfume, a faint, sweet smell that would vanish as soon as I fully opened my eyes, leaving me alone in the silent house once more. The numbers followed, everywhere. 11:11 and 3:33. It started with my phone, checking the time and seeing 11:11. Then the clock on the microwave, 3:33 a.m., waking me from a dream. I'd be driving, and license plates would flash those numbers. Receipts from the grocery store, the total coming up to something with 11.11 or 3.33. It felt less like coincidence and more like a persistent, gentle nudge, a quiet tapping on my shoulder. Like someone was trying to get my attention, using these patterns as a way to stand out from the noise of everyday life. My senses started acting strange too. Everything felt sharper, more intense. I'd hear the distant hum of traffic from miles away, sounds I'd never noticed before. The rustle of leaves outside my window sounded like a whisper. I started seeing subtle shift in light, almost like flickers in my peripheral vision. But when I looked directly, nothing was there. And there was this hum, a low, barely perceptible hum that seemed to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. It was like the air itself was vibrating with a low frequency, a constant companion that I couldn't quite pinpoint. Then came the news report. It was late. I was half watching some science documentary, barely paying attention, when a small blurb flashed across the bottom of the screen. NASA had found a new exoplanet, a twin of Earth. It was just a quick mention, easily missed, but it caught me. Earth's twin. The words hung in the air. It felt too perfect, too coincidental, given everything else that was happening. My mind, still grappling with the strange occurrences, latched onto it. A planet just like ours, Out there. It was a fleeting thought, brushed aside by the weight of my grief, but it stuck. A profound sense of being watched started to settle over me. It wasn't a menacing feeling, not like someone was trying to hurt me. It was more like an intense, curious gaze. The hairs on the back of my neck would stand up, but instead of fear, there was this strange, unsettling anticipation, like waiting for something to happen, something big, something that was just beyond my understanding. The silence of the house, the lingering scent of Sarah, the numbers, the hum, the bird, it all felt like a prelude, a quiet build-up to something I couldn't yet name, but that I knew, deep down, was coming. The subtle nudges from before started to get louder, more insistent. It was like the universe had turned up the volume on its strange symphony. The coincidences weren't just coincidences anymore. They were too frequent, too specific to be random. I'd be thinking about Sarah's favorite book, a worn copy of 100 Years of Solitude. And then, later that day, I'd find it, not on the bookshelf where it belonged, but tucked away in a kitchen drawer, right next to the spices. Or her old silver locket, which I thought I'd lost, would suddenly appear on my bedside table, perfectly centered. It wasn't just appearing. It felt like it was being placed there, carefully, deliberately. Then there were the objects moving. Nothing dramatic, never anything that would make me scream or think I was going crazy. Just subtle shifts, a picture frame on the mantelpiece, slightly askew. A coffee mug on the counter moved an inch to the left. I'd always tell myself I must have done it myself and forgotten, but deep down, I knew that wasn't true. It was too precise, too consistent. It felt like something was trying to get my attention, playing a quiet, almost playful game of, look what I can do. My dreams about Sarah completely changed. She wasn't just observing me anymore. Now, she was active. She'd point, her hand outstretched, her eyes still holding that intense, urgent message. Sometimes she'd gesture towards the window or towards the ceiling or even towards my own reflection in a mirror. It wasn't a voice, but the message was clear. Look up. Listen. And most powerfully, pay attention. I'd wake up feeling like I'd just had a conversation, even though no words were spoken. The feeling of her presence became almost a physical one, a warm, comforting weight beside me in the bed that would dissipate with the morning light. Nature started reflecting this strangeness. It was like the animals around my house were in on it too. One afternoon, I was sitting in the backyard, lost in thought, when a flock of birds, maybe 40 or 50 of them, flew directly over my house. They didn't just fly. They formed these intricate, swirling patterns, like a living, breathing mandala in the sky. It lasted for several minutes. Then they broke formation and flew off, as if nothing unusual had happened. Later that week, I was walking near the woods behind my property, and a deer, a large buck, approached me. It didn't run away when I saw it. It just stood there, maybe 10 feet from me, looking directly into my eyes. Its gaze wasn't fearful or aggressive. It was oddly knowing, almost ancient. It felt like it understood something I didn't. My electronics, usually so reliable, started having a mind of their own. The lights in the living room would flicker, not just once or twice, but in a rhythmic pattern, like a slow Morse code that I couldn't decipher. My old radio, which I rarely used, would sometimes switch on by itself, picking up static whispers that sounded almost like distant voices, just at the edge of comprehension. My phone, the one thing I relied on for connection, would display strange symbols, lines, circles, geometric shapes, Before the screen would freeze and then crash, forcing me to restart it, it felt like an external force was trying to use these devices, trying to break through the static and reach me. The subtle hum I'd noticed before intensified. It wasn't just in the air anymore. It felt like it was inside me, vibrating through my bones, a low-frequency thrum that resonated deep in my chest. It was almost like my own body was becoming a receiver, and the light phenomena became more pronounced. Brief, unexplainable flashes of light, not like camera flashes or lightning, but soft, internal glows, would appear in my peripheral vision. They were always blue or violet, quick bursts of color that would vanish the moment I tried to focus on them directly. They weren't scary. They were almost beautiful, like tiny, fleeting celestial fireworks. All of these things, happening one after another, started to build an overwhelming sense of imminent change. It wasn't a feeling I could ignore anymore. My solitude, which had been a comfort in my grief, now felt like it was being invaded. Not by a threat, but by an unknown presence that was trying to communicate with me. There was a mix of fear, naturally, because it was all so strange and outside of my understanding, but also a profound excitement. A feeling that something monumental, something truly significant, was about to happen. My quiet life was being shaken awake. Then came the first glimpse. It was late at night, and I was just about to turn off the lights in the living room. As I moved, I caught a fleeting, almost imperceptible shadow or shimmer in the corner of my eye. It was too fast to properly register. A ripple in the air, a distortion of light gone before I could even fully turn my head. But it left a distinct chill in the air, a cold spot that lingered for a few seconds. And with it, a clear, undeniable sense that I was not alone. It wasn't a physical person. It was something else. Something formless yet present, watching me, waiting. And I knew, with a certainty, that bypassed logic, that whatever was happening, it was only just beginning. That chill, that sense of not being alone, was just the beginning. The low hum, which had been a background presence, now intensified dramatically. It wasn't just a sound I heard. It was a sensation I felt, deep in my core. It vibrated through the floorboards, up through my feet, into my bones, a resonant frequency that seemed to emanate from everywhere in the house and yet from no single source. It was like living inside a giant, softly thrumming bell. This hum wasn't just physical. It felt like it was doing something to me, subtly altering my perception, making me more open. It was a constant, almost physical presence, a low, steady thrum that seemed to fill every space and every silence, making the air thick with its energy. Then came the direct sensory input, subtle at first, almost like my imagination playing tricks. I'd be sitting, reading a book, and feel a gentle touch on my arm, light as a feather, but undeniably there. I'd glance down, expecting to see a stray hair or a dust motes, but there would be nothing. Later, a fleeting cool breeze would pass through the living room, even with all the windows shut, raising the fine hairs on my skin. It wasn't a draft. It was too localized, too deliberate. And then there was the scent, an unknown, ethereal fragrance, sometimes like fresh rain after a long, dry spell, sometimes like something sweet and floral I couldn't quite place, but always clean, pure, and not of this world. It would appear and disappear just as quickly, leaving me inhaling deeply, trying to hold on to the sensation. These weren't scary experiences. They felt like tentative pokes, exploratory, non-threatening contacts, like someone testing the waters. The repeating numbers, which had been a gentle nudge, now started to appear in more complex sequences. It wasn't just 1111 or 333 anymore. I'd see patterns like 1221, 2332, or long strings of numbers on receipts or digital displays that seemed to contain a hidden order. It felt less like a coincidence and more like a code, a message waiting to be deciphered. An intense urge came over me to research their significance. I found myself drawn to ancient spiritual texts, books on numerology, and even some obscure online forums. To my surprise, many of these sources linked repeating number sequences to spiritual awakening, higher consciousness, and messages from other realms. It felt like I was being given a key, a small piece of a much larger puzzle, and the numbers were leading me to the instructions. My waking hours started to blur with strange, vivid visions. Brief, involuntary moments of feeling detached from my body would occur. I'd be standing in the kitchen, and for a split second, I'd see my own body from a slightly elevated perspective, as if I were floating just above myself, looking down. It was disorienting, but not frightening. More profoundly, flashes of other landscapes would intrude upon my mind, vibrant and alien, unlike anything I'd ever seen on Earth. Swirling nebulae, strange crystalline structures, plants that glowed with their own light, skies with multiple suns. These weren't dreams. These were intrusions into my waking consciousness, brief but incredibly detailed, leaving me breathless and wondering what they meant. The light phenomena, which had been fleeting glimpses, became more defined. Soft, pulsating orbs of light, often blue or violet, would appear in my peripheral vision. They weren't just flashes anymore. They would linger for a moment, sometimes two, before vanishing. They seemed to float, to move with a purpose. One evening, I was sitting on the couch and a small luminous orb, about the size of a golf ball, appeared just above my bookshelf. It pulsed gently, a soft violet glow, for what felt like an eternity, maybe 10 seconds, before winking out of existence. It felt like it was observing me, not with judgment, but with a deep, silent curiosity. I wasn't scared. Instead, a strange sense of calm washed over me. It felt like a gentle presence. A profound realization dawned on me, slowly but surely. All these occurrences, the hum, the touches, the scents, the numbers, the visions, the lights, they were not random. They were connected. They were orchestrated. This wasn't just my grief playing tricks on me, or a series of bizarre coincidences. This was a deliberate, intelligent attempt to reach me. The loneliness that had been my constant companion since Sarah passed began to recede, replaced by a strange sense of purpose, a feeling that I was part of something much larger than myself. My life, which had felt so empty, was now filled with a new kind of meaning, a mysterious unfolding, and then it happened. The first direct telepathic impression. I was sitting quietly, contemplating everything, when a clear, nonverbal thought entered my mind. It wasn't a voice I heard with my ears, but a direct download of understanding, a concept, a feeling. It conveyed simply, "We are here, listen." It wasn't in English or any language I knew, but the meaning was crystal clear, instantly understood. It was accompanied by an overwhelming feeling of immense peace, a warmth that spread through my chest, and a sense of being profoundly seen and understood. There was no fear, no doubt, only a deep calm and an absolute certainty that I had just made contact. The veil, I realized, had thinned completely. The telepathic impression, that clear, silent message of, "We are here, listen," had changed everything. It was no longer a question of what was happening, But why me? And what I was supposed to hear? My mind, once consumed by grief, now buzzed with an urgent need for answers. I started digging, not just into spiritual texts, but into more obscure corners of the internet. I found myself drawn to forums and articles discussing government cover-ups, whisperings about secret space programs, and theories about exoplanet discoveries far beyond what NASA publicly announced. It was a rabbit hole, but something compelled me forward, a nagging feeling that the truth was hidden in plain sight, just out of reach. My research led me to rumors of NASA's exoplanet discovery, the one they called Earth's twin, being far more significant than the official reports suggested. There were leaked documents, quickly debunked and removed, that hinted at more than just a habitable zone. They spoke of indigenous life, not just microbial, but intelligent, advanced. These were not mainstream news stories. They were buried deep, shared by people labeled as conspiracy theorists. But to me, they felt right. They resonated with the strange experiences I was having, with the profound sense of contact. It was as if the universe was guiding my search, highlighting the breadcrumbs I needed to follow. The telepathic impressions became more frequent, more detailed. It wasn't just a single thought anymore. I started receiving images, symbols, complex concepts downloaded directly into my mind. It was like learning a new language, but instead of words, it was pure understanding. I saw geometric patterns that shimmered with meaning, colors I'd never witnessed, and felt emotions that weren't my own. Yet I understood them perfectly. The entity, or entities, never introduced itself with a name in the human sense. Instead, it was a resonant frequency, a unique vibrational signature that I recognized instantly. It wasn't a sound, but a feeling of presence, distinct and powerful, yet gentle. Through these direct downloads, the alien entity began to reveal the truth about Earth's twin. It wasn't just a planet similar to ours. It was a sister planet, deeply connected to Earth through ancient energetic pathways. These pathways weren't physical roads or wormholes, but energetic ley lines that crisscrossed the cosmos, linking worlds with compatible frequencies. The inhabitants of this sister planet were not only advanced but also peaceful, living in complete harmony with their world and each other. They were beings of immense wisdom, guardians of cosmic knowledge, and they had been observing Earth for a very long time. The alien explained the purpose of its contact with me. It wasn't a random choice. I was chosen due to my unique vibrational frequency, which had been amplified by my grief and my spiritual openness. The raw emotion of losing Sarah, combined with my inherent sensitivity, had made me a conduit, a bridge for a critical message. My pain, instead of closing me off, had opened me up, making me receptive to frequencies others couldn't perceive. I was a vessel, a receiver tuned to their specific signal, ready to carry their message to humanity. Then came the warning, a stark message about converging timelines and fracturing realities on Earth. The entity showed me images, not of a single future, but of multiple potential futures, all branching out from the choices humanity was making right now. Our collective choices, especially those driven by fear, division, and greed, were leading us down a precarious path, creating instability not just for our planet, but for the delicate energetic balance of our solar system. It was a clear message that humanity was at a critical juncture, standing on the edge of a precipice, and the path we chose would determine our very existence. In the midst of these profound revelations, I started to understand Sarah's role in this cosmic plan. Her messages in my dreams, her persistent presence, the way she guided me with silent gestures. It all clicked into place. Her passing wasn't just a tragic end, it was a catalyst, a spiritual awakening necessary for me to receive this contact. Her love, even in absence, had created the opening, the vulnerability, and the strength I needed to face this immense truth. She hadn't left me. She had guided me, ensuring I was ready for this moment. It was a heartbreaking realization, but also one filled with a strange, profound sense of gratitude. The alien entity conveyed the urgency of the message. Humanity was truly at a crossroads. The message I was to receive and then share was vital for our survival and our evolution. It was not a threat, but a plea for collective consciousness, a call for a profound shift in direction. The stakes were incredibly high. My life, once defined by loss and solitude, was now imbued with an unimaginable purpose. I was to be a messenger, a voice for a truth that could change the destiny of our world. The weight of it was immense, but so was the feeling of being connected to something so vast, so important. The telepathic link with the alien entity deepened, moving beyond simple impressions and thoughts. It was less like hearing words and more like experiencing a shared consciousness. There were brief, intense moments where I felt like I was seeing through its eyes, or rather, its perception. Complex alien concepts, emotions, and entire fields of knowledge would download into my mind in an instant. Not as a jumble of data, but as a complete understanding. It was a merging of minds, a temporary union that expanded my own consciousness in ways I couldn't have imagined. I felt its ancient wisdom, its serene patience, and an overwhelming sense of connection to something vast and profoundly intelligent. The alien then chose to reveal its true nature, its form. It wasn't a physical body in the way we understand it, not flesh and blood, but something ethereal and luminous. It appeared to me as a shimmering, pulsating field of light and pure energy, constantly shifting in subtle hues of blue, violet, and gold. There was no monstrousness, no grotesque features, just an immense, radiating presence. It felt incredibly ancient, wise beyond comprehension, a guardian rather than an invader. Its presence was overwhelmingly benevolent, filled with a love that transcended human understanding, a universal compassion that made my earlier fears seem trivial. It was a being of pure essence, a consciousness that had existed for eons, observing, guiding, and nurturing life across the cosmos. Through this shared consciousness, I was shown flashes of cosmic history, like fragments of an immense living tapestry. I witnessed the birth of stars, the formation of galaxies, the rise and fall of civilizations on countless worlds. It wasn't a linear viewing, but an immersive experience, feeling the sweep of time, the interconnectedness of all life across the universe. I saw worlds teeming with beings of unimaginable diversity, all part of a grand design. I felt the beauty of creation, the intricate dance of matter and energy, and the delicate balance of existence that held it all together. It was humbling and awe-inspiring, making my human perspective feel incredibly small, yet also deeply significant within the larger cosmic scheme. The alien entity then began to explain the spiritual architecture of the universe. It wasn't a lecture, but a series of profound insights that reshaped my understanding of reality. It spoke of underlying spiritual laws that governed everything, laws far more fundamental than our physical sciences. The power of intention, the ripple effect of collective consciousness, and the true purpose of existence beyond our material reality were laid bare. It explained that our physical world was just one layer of many, and that true reality was far more expansive, energetic, and conscious than we could ever grasp with our limited senses. Our lives, our experiences, our very thoughts were all part of this energetic matrix, constantly influencing and shaping the fabric of existence. It elaborated on the concept of timelines and choice, something it had touched upon before. It wasn't just about different possible futures, but entire parallel realities that existed simultaneously, each a result of different choices made at critical junctures. The entity showed me vivid images of potential futures for Earth, some beautiful and harmonious, others bleak and desolate, all stemming from the choices humanity was making, or failing to make, in the present moment. The urgency for humanity to choose a higher path became overwhelmingly palpable. It wasn't about fate, it was about free will, and the immense power we collectively wielded to steer our own destiny. Every thought, every action, every collective decision was a vote for a particular timeline. And right now, many of our votes were leaning towards a future we wouldn't want. This profound connection, this merging of minds with an ancient cosmic being, was fundamentally changing me. My perception of reality shifted dramatically, like a veil being lifted. The world I knew, the one defined by loss and everyday struggles, now seemed like a tiny fraction of a much larger, more vibrant truth. The intense grief for Sarah, which had once consumed me, began to transform. It wasn't that the love was gone, but it had expanded, deepened. My understanding of life, death, and interconnectedness had evolved. I realized that death wasn't an end, but a transition, and that Sarah was still a part of this cosmic tapestry, her essence continuing to exist, perhaps even guiding me from a different plane. My pain wasn't erased, but it was reframed, becoming a source of strength and empathy, rather than an endless void. As the communication reached its peak, the alien began to download specific information into my consciousness. It was the complex message I was meant to convey to humanity. It wasn't just words or concepts. It was an intricate tapestry of frequencies, feelings, and a profound sense of universal truth. It was a message designed to resonate not just with the mind, but with the heart and soul, to awaken something deep within humanity's collective memory. I felt the weight of this knowledge, its immense power and responsibility. I was being prepared, not just to speak, but to embody this truth, to become a living conduit for a message that could potentially alter the course of human history. The information flowed into me, integrating itself into my being, making me feel upgraded, stronger, and more connected than ever before. The alien's projections intensified, showing me disturbing visions of potential Earth futures. These weren't prophecies set in stone, but rather vivid warnings based on our current trajectory. I saw vast, barren landscapes, choked with pollution, where once vibrant ecosystems had withered and died. Cities became concrete jungles, not of progress, but of desperation, their inhabitants isolated and struggling. Societal divisions deepened into chasms, with technology used not for connection but for control and surveillance, slowly eroding individual freedom. It was a bleak picture, a future where humanity, despite its advancements, had lost its way, trapped in a cycle of self-destruction. These were not inevitable outcomes, the entity stressed, but very real possibilities if we continued on our current path. They were a stark reflection of the choices we were making, or failing to make right now. The importance of unified human consciousness became incredibly clear. The alien showed me how our individual thoughts and emotions, when combined, created a powerful collective energy field around the planet. This field, it explained, acted like a magnet, attracting certain realities. When we were fractured, divided by fear, anger, and competition, this collective field became chaotic, pulling us towards those darker timelines. But when we acted with empathy, understanding, and a shared vision of peace, the field harmonized, opening pathways to brighter futures. My own actions, my own state of being, were part of this massive, intricate web. Every single person contributed, and the current fractured state of humanity was accelerating those negative timelines at an alarming rate. It was like a ship with 1,000 captains, each trying to steer in a different direction, inevitably leading to a crash. The alien then explained something it called an energy blockade. It described Earth as being surrounded by a kind of energetic barrier, preventing higher dimensional assistance or perhaps even communication from fully reaching us. This blockade wasn't imposed by an external force. It was a self-created phenomenon, a direct result of humanity's own low vibrational output. Our collective fear, anger, greed, and general disharmony generated a dense energy that acted like a thick fog, obscuring the light and wisdom that was always available to us from higher realms. It was as if we were shouting into a pillow, wondering why no one could hear us. To lift this blockade, to allow the flow of higher energies and guidance, humanity needed to raise its collective frequency, to consciously choose love over fear, unity over division. The urgency of the message was undeniable. The alien conveyed that while time was fluid and not linear, in the way we understood it, there was a critical window for intervention, a period where our choices would have the most profound impact. This window, it implied, was closing. The message I was carrying was not just information, it was a key, a catalyst designed to unlock human potential and shift the collective trajectory away from those bleak futures. It was a call to awaken, to remember who we truly were, and to consciously participate in shaping our destiny. The weight of this responsibility settled on me, heavy yet exhilarating. Then came the personal cost of the mission. The alien showed me glimpses of what might happen if I chose to deliver this message. I saw faces filled with disbelief, heard echoes of ridicule, felt the sting of being dismissed as delusional. There was the potential for isolation, for being misunderstood, perhaps even targeted by those who preferred the status quo, who benefited from the current energy blockade. But alongside these challenges, it also showed me the profound impact if the message was heard, if even a few people truly resonated with it. It was a path fraught with difficulty, but also with immense potential for positive change. I understood that this would not be an easy journey, but the possibility of helping humanity outweighed any personal discomfort. In my dreams, Sarah now appeared with a renewed vibrancy. She was almost translucent, shimmering with a soft inner light. Her smile was wider, her eyes filled with a knowing peace. She didn't speak, but she nodded, a gentle, reassuring gesture that reinforced my resolve. Her presence was a silent supporter, a beacon of love that cut through any lingering fear or doubt. She was affirming my path, letting me know that I was on the right track, and that her initial guidance had led me exactly where I needed to be. Her role in all of this, I now fully understood, was not just as a catalyst for my grief, but as a continuous source of spiritual support. The alien began the final preparations for the message's dissemination. It wasn't just downloading information anymore. It was imbuing me with an enhanced ability to articulate these complex concepts, to translate abstract frequencies and feelings into understandable human language. It felt like my very consciousness was being upgraded, My capacity for communication expanded. I felt a surge of energy, a clarity of thought I had never experienced before. It was as if my mind was being tuned to a higher frequency, allowing me to perceive and express truths that were previously beyond my grasp. I was being prepared not just to speak words, but to convey the essence, the very vibration of the message. I was becoming a vessel, ready to carry this extraordinary knowledge to the world. The final phase of the transmission began. It felt less like receiving information and more like an integration, a complete download of understanding directly into my being. The alien, in its luminous, energetic form, seemed to expand, enveloping me in its light. This wasn't just a message, it was a multifaceted tapestry, woven with threads of hope, urgent warnings, and profound empowerment. It spoke of humanity's true, divine potential, a potential we had largely forgotten, buried under layers of societal conditioning and fear. It reminded me of our forgotten origins, not just as inhabitants of Earth, but as integral parts of a vast, interconnected cosmic tapestry, each thread vital to the whole. This was a story far grander than any I had ever imagined, a story where humanity played a crucial, often overlooked role. The core of the message wasn't just abstract concepts. It provided a clear path, a guide for humanity to shift towards a higher, more positive timeline. These were not commands, but suggestions, spiritual principles that, if embraced, could fundamentally alter our collective destiny. It spoke of fostering unity, moving beyond the petty divisions that plague our world, and recognizing our shared humanity. It emphasized embracing empathy, truly understanding and feeling the experiences of others, breaking down the walls of indifference. Reconnecting with nature was crucial, not just as a resource, but as a living, breathing entity, a source of profound spiritual wisdom and balance. And perhaps, most importantly, it urged us to seek inner truth, to look beyond external distractions, and discover the vast universe that resides within each of us. These were the keys, simple yet profound, to unlocking our collective future. The alien stressed that this monumental shift, this turning point for humanity, would not begin with grand, sweeping gestures from governments or institutions. Instead, it would start with individual awakening. Each person who chose to look inward, to embrace these principles, to raise their own vibrational frequency, would contribute to a powerful ripple effect. Every awakened soul, it explained, added to the collective frequency shift needed to overcome the current challenges, to dismantle the energetic blockade that held us back. It was a grassroots movement of consciousness, a quiet revolution happening within the hearts and minds of individuals, slowly but surely transforming the whole. My role, then, was to ignite that spark wherever I could. The message also offered a new understanding of what we often refer to as God or creation. It redefined traditional concepts of divinity, moving away from an anthropomorphic, distant figure. Instead, it presented a universal, interconnected consciousness that permeated all existence. This consciousness wasn't separate from us. It was us. It was everything. It was the energy that animated the stars, the life force within every cell, the love that bound us together. This divine source was accessible to all, not through intermediaries or dogma, but through direct experience, through the inner journey of self-discovery. It was a liberating concept, one that dissolved the barriers between the sacred and the mundane, revealing the sacred in every moment. Humanity, the message made clear, stood at a precipice. The choice was stark, yet entirely ours to make. We could continue down the current path, one of increasing division, environmental degradation, and spiritual disconnect, leading inevitably to self-destruction. Or we could embrace our true potential, remember our cosmic heritage, and step into a golden age of enlightenment, an era of unprecedented peace, harmony, and evolution. The future was not predetermined. It was a living, breathing canvas that we, collectively, were painting with our thoughts, our intentions, and our actions. This was not a passive waiting game. It was an active co-creation. As the full weight and beauty of the message settled within me, I felt an overwhelming sense of destiny. It wasn't a burden, but a sacred duty, a profound calling to deliver this message to humanity, regardless of the personal cost. The fear of ridicule, the apprehension of being misunderstood, all faded into insignificance compared to the importance of this truth. My lingering loneliness, the void left by Sarah's passing, was now replaced by an incredible, profound connection to all life, to the universe itself. I was no longer an isolated individual. I was a conduit, a messenger, a tiny but vital part of something infinitely larger. Slowly, gently, the luminous entity began to recede. Its light softened, dimming gradually, and the deep, resonant hum that had become a constant companion began to diminish, fading into a barely perceptible whisper. Yet, as its physical manifestation lessened, its presence did not entirely vanish. A subtle, energetic connection remained, a delicate thread linking me to its vast consciousness. It was no longer an external guide, but an internalized wisdom, a guiding force now woven into the fabric of my being. I was no longer alone in this journey. I carried the essence of its wisdom within me, a constant reminder of the profound truth that had been revealed. The world was waiting, and I was ready to speak. My home felt different, imbued with a sacred energy, a lingering echo of the profound encounter. The air seemed to shimmer with a subtle vibrancy, and ordinary objects held a new, almost luminous quality. I was changed, fundamentally altered by the experience. The world I had known, the familiar streets, the mundane routines, now looked both familiar and profoundly new, seen through eyes that had glimpsed the infinite. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing layers of reality I had never perceived before. An undeniable compulsion to share the message consumed me. It wasn't a choice. It was a burning need, a deep-seated command from within. Every fiber of my being urged me to articulate what I had learned, to somehow translate the cosmic symphony I had witnessed into human words, to awaken others to the urgent truth. The weight of it was immense, yet it was also a profound privilege. How could I keep such a revelation to myself, knowing what I now knew about humanity's precarious position and its magnificent potential? But then the natural human fear crept in, a cold, insidious doubt. How could I convey such an extraordinary truth without being dismissed as delusional? The ridicule, the disbelief, the potential danger of being seen as unstable or even a charlatan. These thoughts swirled in my mind, threatening to drown the fire that had been ignited within me. Who would believe me? A grieving man claiming to have been contacted by an alien from a sister planet, bearing a message for all humanity? It sounded like the plot of a bad science fiction movie. The enormity of the task felt paralyzing. It was then, in a dream that was more real than waking life, that Sarah appeared one last time. She wasn't urgent or distressed as in previous dreams. Instead, she was peaceful, radiant, her eyes sparkling with understanding and love. She simply smiled, a soft, knowing smile that filled the space around her with warmth. and gave a final, reassuring nod. It was the push I needed, the gentle but firm affirmation that dispelled my fears. Her presence, even in a dream, was a reminder that I was not alone, that her journey had led me to this, and that my purpose was true. The fear receded, replaced by a quiet resolve. With Sarah's silent blessing, I took the first steps. I began to record my experiences, to write down the message, knowing that the internet, and specifically YouTube, was the only place where such a message might reach enough people to make a difference. It was a platform where voices, no matter how unconventional, could find an audience. I started with my personal journey, the grief, the synchronicities, the dreams, building a foundation for the incredible truth I was preparing to reveal. Each word I typed, each sentence I formed, was an act of faith, a step into the unknown. I knew I couldn't just present the full alien message all at once. It was too vast, too complex, too far removed from our current understanding. I had to build up to it, to guide my audience, just as I had been guided. So I decided to frame it as a series, an unfolding narrative that would allow people to absorb the information in digestible pieces. I would share the story of my contact, the aliens' insights, and the profound implications for humanity, one video at a time. This first video would be the introduction, the invitation for others to join me on this journey. As I prepared to record, I imagined the faces of the people who would watch, those who were perhaps feeling the same unease about the world, the same yearning for something more. I would speak directly to them, to you, the audience. I would explain that this was just the beginning, a glimpse behind the curtain of our perceived reality. I would pose rhetorical questions, encouraging you to look within, to question what you thought you knew. Have you ever felt a strange sense of déjà vu, a feeling that something bigger is at play? Do you ever look at the stars and feel a pull, a longing for something you can't quite name? Do you sense deep down that the world is on the cusp of a profound change? These feelings, I would say, are not random. They are echoes of a universal truth stirring within you. I would conclude with a powerful summary of the aliens' core message, that humanity holds the power to change its destiny. We are not helpless observers. We are conscious creators. The future is not set in stone, but shaped by our collective choices, our thoughts, our intentions. We have the capacity for immense love, for profound wisdom, and for a unity that can overcome any challenge. The message is one of hope, a beacon in uncertain times, a reminder of our true potential. I would promise to share more, to reveal the full depth of the message in upcoming videos, to guide them on this incredible journey of awakening. And of course, I would end with a call to action, a gentle nudge to subscribe, to join me as we explore the universe within and without, together. This was not just my story. It was our story, the story of humanity's awakening. And it was only just beginning.